as you can see, there is a 79% of diners. So we have done some key findings. And where different percentages come from is how the diners are taking on the digital trends. I guess the conversion is not working out well. Okay, so maybe I'll move. Cool. So there are different findings that we've done on how digital impacts restaurant and finally the consumers. So what it says is 79% diners feel that yes, guest experience does change and improve if there is a technology use. There is a 42% that believe that they would like to get the restaurant bills and their payment receipts on digital and not as a printed paper-based receipts. So that's a huge percentage that's changing, and it's changing across the globe. If you look at 57% of the guests, I think there was a very relevant question in the last session on asking on why people and how would an Uber Eats or a Zomato or somebody else would do the online ordering. But if you look at the world trends, 57% of end consumers would not mind going to a restaurant's own website or mobile site to place an order and not go through a aggregate website. There is also a clear 36% of the guests think that one of the major things they look out on a restaurant is to do an online reservation, and it should be available fairly easily and faster. 58% of the restaurants would definitely, consumers would use mobile payments. So that's the other upcoming trend, that the more mobile payments you allow, people are ready to use that. We move to some of the next, sorry for this distortion. But what we have done is, what is before dining? So what does a consumer do? So the questions that were asked in the survey were, how would you go to a restaurant? How would you choose to go to a restaurant? The staggering difference is the longest graph, if you see, is 78% said, we would always go to the restaurant first if it's recommended by a friend. So that's the most common of all, in spite of all. And the other shocking thing is, 61% feel that if the restaurant has more engagement on social media, we are likely to go there first, then seeing the reviews on a Google or any other platform. So that's some of the right data points on surveys, as you can see. The other one we said on the latest trends, online ordering. So we did some survey on that. As I said, 57% would definitely order from a restaurant's own website. There is 62% diners would prefer ordering on mobile. So that's the other, probably a known trend, but that's something which will define how your site is built, how mobile compatible as a restaurant we are. The other one we said is during dining. So what defines a good restaurant? So I've gone through the search, I'm inside the restaurant. How would you define a good restaurant experience? Again, 60% says the restaurant food has to be the best, if at all they want to come back. So from all of it, it's still the food rules. And the second one, 21%, is the service. So these are the two main ingredients for someone to define a good experience. Usage of tablets and gadgets inside the restaurant. So that's the other question. So we had varies in the survey when we asked people, a lot of people said, even gave comments saying that in some restaurants, especially dine-in restaurants, they sometimes feel annoying if they are given too many tablet-based menus and everything is tablet and there is no server. At the same time, the casual dine or coffee outlets, people don't mind pulling orders through kiosk or doing it on their phone. So there is a stark difference in the consumer behavior on the way they behave when they go to a fine dine versus a casual dine. So that's what the overall statistics is. And the common one was that they don't mind waiter taking orders directly on a tablet because they feel that that will speed up things. So that's the perception people have, that a waiter taking order on tablet, the food will come faster. So that's why they like it. Payments. The other survey on the payments was, for all coffee QSR, it still defines that the maximum payment option people still prefer is cash. And then they go by credit cards. Mobile is the most upcoming in small payments. As you can see, it's 15%. In a fine dine, it's completely reversed. Credit card rules number one. So that's how people define it. From receipts, people are saying email receipts is the most required tool right now, where nobody wants to take the invoice or the payment receipts in paper. So that's the trend that's going on. So just to make it, we are just opening the floor now. I'll probably get Kumar to start connecting. What kind of topics we're going to cover in the discussion today? So we have these topics are connecting with people. So how are you going to connect with your consumers? Is it personalized experience or a push marketing? Are you aware of your social presence? Is it more of engagement, or is it just about creative posts? Or are you in a business for long haul? Are you trying to get loyal customers, build loyalty, or build new customers? Building a brand, and how is your brand vulnerable? So we'll talk on a few topics on what's happening inside and outside. That's what we're trying to cover in this session. So I'll hand over to Kumar to start.
Do you want to introduce yourself, Piyush, before we go? Thanks.
Hi. So I'm Piyush, and I run LimeTray. We have been doing LimeTray for 4 years now, and before LimeTray, me and Akhilesh were part of Foodpanda. So one of the things that we realized at the time of starting LimeTray was the consumer behavior were changing drastically. Three fundamental things of running businesses have remained consistent, but what technology is doing is it's changing the way how those things happen. So one of the things was, or one of the things is how customers discover restaurant. So earlier, it used to be primarily very, very offline driven. Let's say if we talk about 20 years down the line, it used to be very, very offline way of doing things, where you are, if you had to be in a high footfall area just to get your customers to discover you. 10 years back, it started with, let's say, flyering, offline marketing, newspaper ads, so on and so forth. And now, almost everything, all the transactions which happen with the restaurant, be it for the new customer or for the old customers, all of those transactions are being assisted through online mediums. Be it a customer who is searching for, be it a customer who'd want to get food delivered, they would search for the phone number either on Google or Zomato. Be it a customer who would want to order online, they would either directly go on the restaurant's own website, as the data, as Samir was talking about, or they would go on Zomato, Swiggy, etc., wherever the customer feels that the brand is more strong. If a customer would want to go to a restaurant for dine-in, then they would go on Google either to search for the reviews, directions, so on and so forth, or they'll go on Zomato to look at reviews or to discover the new restaurants if they don't know of the restaurant already. So this was the first drastic thing which sort of changed. And second thing was in terms of the engagement, which is once again the fundamental truth that how customers order with the restaurant. So earlier it was primarily more around new customers ordering with the restaurants, and there was no engagement as such which a restaurant would do with the customer. Or let's say whatever the engagement was, that engagement was not differentiated between the new customer and old customer. At best, the engagement, if we talk about 10 years back or 5 years back, it would be sending the same communication, same SMS to all the customers. Where technology has come in is it has given the ability to the restaurants to segment their customers as deep as possible and engage with them to drive more and more repeat business. In an ideal scenario, which is where if the engagement would have gotten personalized to the extent where every customer is being sent out communication, which is very personalized, that would be the ideal scenario, but we can using technology and data, we can take steps in segmenting the customers and reaching out to them to sort of solve for the repeat. And the third thing which has remained consistent is where the technology sort of coming in is to solve for operational challenges. Once again, 5 years back, 10 years back, restaurants were fairly independent in operating their businesses. They did not need anyone to, they'd be fairly comfortable working independently per se. But now, given that multiple partners, that things are getting segmented, right? So there are aggregators which have started coming in. There was a talk earlier about Uber Eats. There is Zomato, Foodpanda, Swiggy. Then there are delivery companies which have started coming in. Then there are payments. The consumer behavior is changing around payments, right? Offline payments have started coming in. And between all of these things, operationals are becoming hassle for the restaurants. So these are the three core problems which we are trying to solve from technology for the restaurants at LimeTray, where we have different products that we give to the restaurants, and we help them sort of get better at all three. And as these are the trends which have started now, and I think a lot of things which would there is on the dine-in side of the things have not changed a lot, but I'm sure most of you would know about Amazon Go, which has come in. That's the next sort of retail transformation, which is going to hit about in 4 or 5 years of time. At that point of time, technology would play far more pivotal role than what it is doing right now. So these are sort of things that we do at LimeTray. We work with about 2,500 odd restaurants primarily across India, Dubai. Some of restaurants we have in different parts of the world, quite a few restaurants. We work with restaurants primarily focused on delivery from big chains like Burger King, Maddo Donuts, to smaller restaurants, regional restaurants like Biryani by Kilo, Burger Sing, and then single outlets. Once again, to solve for the three problems that they face, and through the products. So we can start with the question.
Thank you, Piyush. Let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Kumar Katra. I have been with the food industry for last 25 years. My only experience is building experiences for consumers. I've had the privilege of working with researchers from Harvard, Stanford, doing a lot of work on how consumers are changing, how the trends are changing, and where the market is going. So thank you for having me on this forum, and I'm going to moderate this session on your behalf. So before we get to the moderation session, I'm keen to understand how many people run restaurants. Show of hands, please. How many people are in business of some connection to consumers? Okay, great. So this is going to be an interesting session if you want to make it interesting. There's a fight between technology and consumer experience, the touch and the tech. Yeah, I will raise a couple of questions, but I depend on you to raise more questions. Let's make it exciting. We have next 15, 20 minutes getting both the technocrats answer some difficult questions. Make it as difficult as you can. So first question to both Samir and Piyush. Just about 5-10 years back, I had consumers walking into the restaurant. They would love my food, love my ambience, walk in, walk out, give me feedback, only word of mouth. It was not longer than 10 years ago. And as a restaurateur, I was happy. I was not sharing my margins with anybody. I had nothing to worry about from a marketing perspective. My consumer was my word of mouth, and that's how my business ran. Today, technology is disrupting the business, which is great. We're growing leaps and bounds. I want to understand from your perspective, how do you see the impact on the industry from how this technology is changing the industry? What impacts will it bring? We've seen lots of it in the last 10 years, but where is it going? Samir?
Thanks, Kumar. I guess the experience that you just mentioned definitely was 10 years back. The difference that we are seeing across the world now is 2 to 3 different countries have different problems. So we have Singapore, which has, or more matured markets, have different problems of labor, of people not available. Staffing is an issue. Markets like India or maybe Philippines, it's more restaurants. I think Philippines is one of the most densely, the number of restaurants per square foot is the highest probably in the world. And that itself tells you that there is too much competition that I would just go out and without doing anything which you mentioned as an experience, the customer is still the king. So I guess where the transformation is happening over the last 10 years is multiple reasons. One is either competition is telling me that I need to now have my own data or my own way of marketing and branding myself. And that's where one area where technology is playing a role. The other areas are people-related issues. My operations are getting more complex. My cost of operating is getting more complex. I'm not finding more people. That's where I need to use systems, whether it's my POS, a better point of sale systems, or whether it's my inventory management. So I think that's the other area where technology is coming in. And third is the consumer behavior. So what a person 10 years or 12 years back would do, today might not be doing the same, because I'm not calling the restaurant as usual. I'd love to go online, or I'd love to go on a social platform to engage. So I think those are, in my mind, the reasons why the technology play is evolving so fast, and why a restaurant as a business needs to catch up with this because of the overall market scenario.
Thank you. That was interesting. Piyush?
So I think I'll answer it from the restaurant perspective more rather than from the consumer perspective. From restaurant perspective, restaurateurs' perspective, one of the things I think which has changed is the customers, because the customers are now able to discover the restaurants in a much easier way. So it has become a little bit more so earlier, the way restaurant would market, once again, as I was talking earlier, was primarily through either offline channels, where they had the entire control on what content would they want to push to the customers. I think that has changed drastically now, and because given most of the discovery is happening on the internet, hence there is most of the discovery is happening on the internet. Plus, it has also become which has made it super easy for the customers to find the restaurants, which has then directly reduced the repeat rate for the customers. So I think this is the one core thing which has led to that's the one fundamental thing which I think is changing. And second thing which has changed is in the operation side of things, wherein earlier the decisions which would be taken would be far less data driven than what it could be right now. So in terms of solving for profit margins, etc., all of those things are now far more, the tools which are available, they are now far more better than what they would be, let's say 10 years back.
Sure, thank you. I guess in this group, almost everybody has been in the industry for 10 years or longer, from food business perspective? Okay, great. So if not, then I'll fire away the next question. Everybody in this room has a mobile device? Everybody? I can't see everybody's hands. Does everybody use computer, internet? Yes, great. How many devices? I think on an average, everybody has more than 2 mobility devices, internet devices. And imagine getting lots of information through these 2 devices every day. How much mind share are you consuming? Are you making the right decisions? Are you getting the right perspectives? Yeah, so my next question is directed towards what are you doing? How are you engaging your consumer, right? Are you making the right marketing choices to engage your consumers? What do you do and what you shouldn't do to make sure you're in the business of getting your consumer engagement right, and make sure that you get your consumers into your door with the right information? So, Samir, you want to start with that perspective?
Sure. So I think on a customer engagement, the last 6 years has been a great learning. In fact, the way Mobicon started was with a restaurant of my friend. He was running for 15 years. And the first question I asked him is that, okay, how do you collect customer data? He took me at the back office, showed me a steel cupboard, and it was, I think, 2 cupboards filled with forms, which were feedback forms collected over a few years, which were just stacking there. And he said, that's the data. And there are some cards which are in those fish bowls where people might have thrown in. And so that's from there, the industry is now getting to understand the power of data. But what happens is, I've seen across, is that there is a lot of data hijack. And restaurants per se is never able to build their own CRM. And I've always used this example that as a restaurateur, you must be spending a lot of money to drive footfalls to your restaurant. whether it is not necessary marketing, whether it's your place itself, rentals, ambience, interiors, the kind of cuisine that you make. You do everything ultimately to get in footfalls. Now, when the footfall comes, we don't do anything. So that's where the gap is. And I think that's the first area where a lot of thought needs to go in, that what am I doing? Because I'm getting the customers to come in, but I don't have an area of engaging or at least acquiring them. Now, coming to engagement, most of the times, even today, I find a lot of restaurants will say, okay, what's your engagement? Oh, we do SMS every month, every week. We do emails. We spend so much. And like I remember for a long time, I was talking, there's a great argument inside the company. Every time a sales guy comes back, they would say, oh, the restaurant is asking, what is your SMS rate? And I get so fed up because I felt like if I have to sell SMS, why did I make Mobicon, right? I mean, I don't need to build a company if you want to just make and send SMS. And I think that's where the engagement comes in. And engagement definition is about right message at the right time to the right audience. And it's not about sending out messages on a daily basis, because that is not going to solve a purpose. Or it's not about every time doing an advertisement or spending a paper ad or a radio ad. I think if the engagement cycle is built and the customers are captured at the right time of the transactions, amazing engagement cycles can be built based on the customer spend, based on the customer visit, based on gender, based on day of the visit. So you have to basically create a complete ecosystem of engagement and then do it rather than doing a mass scale engagement. So I think in my mind, that's the new era. And the engagement doesn't stop always by sending out something. The engagement can be as good as a very subtle branding of yours. The way you greet the customer is also an engagement. The way you design your menu is an engagement. So a lot of the areas we've seen restaurants, they build amazing infrastructures, but the menu is still the old school menu. And you feel like, why didn't I put some more money and design a better menu? Because that's more engaging than the guy sitting and just seeing at the ambience. He's going to see ambience only once. The rest of the time, he wants to see your menu. So I think engagement to me is a lot of areas. And that's what we're trying to build at Movicon in order to keep improving and understanding the engagement piece.
Thank you, Samir. Piyush?
So it's so funny that Samir said, engagement on the SMSs is what doesn't work. But then he sort of moved back to the second bit where he talked about primarily engagement being very, very specific to specific customers. I think that's what you're referring to, right? So this is what the problem is. SMS engagement is seen as it's something which is spam, right? That's what it is considered. You'd send out SMSs to all the customers in the hope that there would be transaction. But that's, as you correctly put it, that's not the engagement. But is SMS the right way to engage the customers? Of course. I mean, we've been doing engagement on SMSs, emails, push notifications. I mean, there are multiple ways to engage the customers: email, SMS, push notification, social media. Even sending postcards could be one way to engage the customers. But SMS is something that we've seen the highest conversions, what's across all the platforms. But the right thing to do on the engagement bit is, as you're saying, is to really segment the customers. The engagement, if you really think about engagement is whom to send, what to send, when to send. This is what would constitute of the engagement. Whom to send, what happens in most of the cases is whom to send, all. What to send, the same content. When to send, same time to all the customers. That is what the definition of engagement is right now in the industry. But think about it, if it could change to whom to send could be a specific set of customers to whom the engagement needs to be sent out, and that engagement should primarily be revolving around as many data attributes as it could be found, right? It could be how many times the customer has done the transaction, what was the last feedback on the order, what was the, when was the last order, how many orders that the customers have done, how much revenue the customer has done. There are multiple segments around it, right? And then that would further define what to send. What to send could be, so the customers who have been consistently coming, you would not want to send discount. but the customers who have not been coming, you'd want to send discount maybe. The customers who have done 5 orders and gave very bad feedback or 1-star rating, 2-star rating on the last order, you would not want to send them discount. You'd want to say, hey, I'm sorry, we messed up on your last order. So whom to send will define what to send, and then the last bit is when to send. So when to send is once again a function of when do the customer, at what point of time the probability of the customer conversion is significantly high. And that's once again gets driven from the data, right? So overall, for me, the engagement would primarily be all around ability to sort of, structure the customers into different segmentations, giving them right content to drive up more repeat, and engaging with them at the right point of time. Means can be whatever, right? It might just as well be SMS, email. You know what? It could just as well be call at the right point of time. That might just have the highest conversions for a particular customer. If you know that this customer is going to order at 7 o'clock, I think that the best way to work would be calling the customer at 6:59. But given that that's not possible, and hence the channels which have the ability to engage with the customer at a significantly higher levels, like SMSs and emails and Facebooks and so on. So all of those things come into the picture. So that's how I look at the engagement primarily. And engagement is definitely something because repeat business for a restaurant is, new customer discovery is getting so easy day by day, right? You go on Google, there are, on the Google cards, there are restaurants which have now started coming up, right? The people who have Android phone have access to the restaurant nearby them at all points of time. The restaurants where the customers where they have ordered from, so the customers, if they have ordered from a particular restaurant, that gets featured on the Google cards list. It has started happening already. People go on Zomato to sort of identify the restaurant. The discovery is becoming easier and easier and easier, but because the discovery is becoming easier, the repeat rates are going down the hill. And that's where the engagement needs to come in, and engagement needs to come in a very, very strong way just to retain those customers. Otherwise, it just doesn't work out without that.
Great, thank you, Piyush. So I'm going to change the gears a little bit and get to the next level of discussion. Since yesterday, I've been hearing various macroeconomic, microeconomic factors that have impacted businesses. So we're lucky we're only talking India right now. Since November, we've seen demonetization, remonetization, alcohol ban, GST issues, etc., etc. A lot of this is completely not in our control. Is that right statement to make? Does that impact the business? Any answers? Yes, no? Show of hands, yes? Some of them disagree. Okay, great. So let's have that agreement, disagreement. So question again is that here is my business. I'm a restaurant owner. I am running a restaurant, and because of some factors beyond my control, I don't get consumers walk into my restaurant. Can technology do something to help me improve or overcome these factors, which is completely not in my control? It'll come and go from time to time, or may stay for some duration. How do I utilize technology? Samir? Sure, okay. Piyush?
Restaurant business overall. Like any business, I think for any retail business, if you'll go across, I give a classic example of, you say the most competitive field today is insurance. So insurance, there are many companies, And they're all running behind the same consumers, right? So if you go off on an insurance, the guy is constantly behind and saying, I need you and you need to sign up. And the restaurant is the same. I take those two analogy. And why it's the same? Because you're running behind the same consumers. And you have to get that share of mind. The difference is an insurance business is very well equipped from a technology to a backend to an understanding, whereas a restaurant business is not at all equipped. It's mainly either sometimes go by the owner's will and vision, or sometimes I'm like willing to do something, sometimes I'm not willing to do something. Whereas an industry like insurance is very well structured, so to say, right? So they would take a lead, they would always have it in the CRM. A restaurant would say, okay, you come in today, I have not captured you, he'll take it lightly, but he doesn't understand how would I reach that same guy because 10 others are going to pounce on him. As a Friday comes in, or as a Saturday comes in, or as whatever day they want to reach out. So I think the first is the mindset needs to shift. And we need to understand you are, as a restaurant, you are as equal a retail outlet as a business, as any outside, whether it's even an insurance. And you need those systems in place if you want to get out of certain economic macro or micro issues. Because when you have that data at your end, you have the knowledge, you have the analytics, and you have the trends, it is far easy for you to bring back the business compared to that I will have to wait and I'll have to pray to God that something happens and people start coming in. So I guess in my mind, I always put those two. And we've worked with a lot of brands from the scratch. And we know it, right, from whether the large ones that we have in Manila, which is 200 and 300 outlets, and we know the kind of stuff that we discuss in the boardroom with those brands, and we go through the whole area. And that's the learning which we kind of share, that a lot of times when you work with larger brands, they even have issues in certain areas. So it's like why I'm saying Philippines or India, because sometimes you might have, we just had a so-called riot here, right? So you might have restaurants in Delhi and Chandigarh and Gurgaon and few in Bombay, you might have 4 restaurants out of 10 shut down today because there's a riot. So I can't do anything. Now, but as a business, you have to go through your P&L across, and you have to say, how do I grow business in other outlets to minimize the loss of the shutdown outlets for the time being? So I think all of that you can play in real time if you have the right data and the right buttons to be played at. So that's why it is very critical to have a technology which can drive these initiatives.
But we must all pray to God.
For sure.
For business.
Yeah.
Piyush.
So let me just understand what you asked and correct me if I'm wrong. So you were asking that because of things which go out of the context, how do you deal with them? Is that what the question is?
So yeah, quite like that. So what I was saying is that in last 2 days, the discussions have been businesses are impacted, completely not in my control. Either it's demonetization, remonetization. I'm saying any kind of incident that is not in your control, does technology have a role to make sure that my business is still running and is sustainable?
Sure, got it. So it's essentially around how kiosk management wherever, right? So of course it does, right? And there are things which will happen where there are just things which happen which are not planned for, and it happens everywhere, not just specific to restaurants, it'll happen everywhere. GST, when it happened, right, the bigger companies got shut down and economy had whatever, right? So it will keep on happening. But what can be done to solve for it is understanding the problem which happens at that point of time, that what can I do right now to solve for my immediate problem. And the only way to do that would be understanding. So there are 2 things to it once again. So one is for some people, they might feel that, some people might just feel that, this particular month is a slower month. But it just could be that that's what the trend is. So one of the things which might feel that, these are something which are happening out of the context, a lot of those things might just get solved if you really understand the data in a much, much, much better way. So that's something which is what we call trends. And there are a few trends that, so for example, one of the trends, and this is something that we have seen is, and I'm going back on the engagement side of things, is that the repeat rate, irrespective of the customer, when they have ordered, which day they have ordered, 7-day repeat rate spikes up 14, it goes down, 14 days spikes up. It is lesser than 7 day, but this is how it happened. So these are not, these are some of the things which could be figured out basis, if you have more data, then these are some of the things that you could sort of plan for. And the things that you cannot plan for at that point of time, you need to just understand whatever means which are at your disposal, how much understanding can you get of the situation, and all of that once goes back to the data once again, and then what is it that you could do? Maybe you should have systems in place which can give you as deep visibility about the things which are happening and can help you take action at that point of time. So for example, if there are shops which are getting shut down in Gurgaon, then at that point of time, you need to have visibility that exactly what sort of items which are there in my Gurgaon kitchens, and of those items, how many of those are going to get whatever, are going to go bad in next 2 days of time, and what I really need to move out. Or it might just as well be, that if there is a sudden decrease in the orders, then what sort of offers which can be run immediately on these specific items, which can just get me more and more customers. So all of this is, I think, be it either for things which are already planned or things which are not planned, I think data will definitely play a significant role in impacting the business. So I think that definitely happens.
Great, thanks. Let's shift gears a little bit to the controversial side. Is everybody happy with that? Yeah? Okay, I'm seeing some smiles, and I can see that there's a little bit more excitement. Show of hands, how many people believe restaurant business is in excess of 50% margins? Wow. I have to learn something from you. Show of hands, how many people believe restaurant business is a very low margin business? I think I tend to tilt towards people who believe restaurant is a low margin, very complex, very tough business, which is true. At least that's what I've seen in my experience of running few hundred restaurants across few countries, and also being an entrepreneur with single standalone restaurant. So my experience both sides was it's a very wafer-thin margin business. It's very difficult when you start a restaurant and try to build your brand. There are some choices you have to make. Choice is to be the best restaurant in town, the best restaurant in the country, the best product in city and known for it, like Dal Bukhara, yesterday's discussion. I want to be a brand which is really known for my Dal Bukhara. Or I want to be a restaurant, to be very well-known restaurant, to be a discount restaurant. Okay, so both ways, not wrong. Business is business. Either you're a great brand with great product, or you're a great discounting kind of a restaurant. So where is technology taking us? Is it helping us build the brand, or is it helping us improve the discounting business? Anybody? Piyush, you want to start this time? Yeah? Okay, Samir goes first.
Okay. I guess, both, in my mind, technology has two angles again, right? So it's who is driving what. You've seen the likes of Groupon, which has come and gone, it's kind of reducing. And the reason is the whole model on Groupon was to discount. It works for some businesses, like you rightly said, but sizable businesses, it didn't work. You have other areas where people feel that, okay, if I have to engage, I have to give discounts. So my whole idea is, I do a reservation, but I'll attract more people if I give them more discount and get people in. Again, if you play with the data will answer your questions. One, most of the times, if your discount categories are too high or are given across as a flat discount, whether it's me or 10 others coming in, you are likely to get customers who might not be the relevant customers for your brand, because I'm just coming because I have 20% off. Sometimes you're giving me discount because I know that there is a place where you always get discount, so I'll always come through that place, even if I'm coming for the third time, second time, fifth time. So what you're losing is a top line all the time. And whenever we do discussions, I've done this discussions in multiple countries with multiple restaurants. There's a standard trend and data analysis there. So if you're a restaurant which is less than 2 years old, the guy is in the meeting, he's straight fit, and he'll say, Samir, all I want is new customers. If your product can do it, great. If not, there's the door. If I meet a restaurant which is 2 to 5 years, his style changes. So he'll sit a bit back, he'll say, okay, your product looks good, but you know what, I would say, yeah, I think I need to take customer feedback. So maybe we'll start with 1 or 2 modules, but let's sit. Then you go to a guy who's running more than 5 years. Now he's gone through everything. So if he's there, he's gone through all of it, right? So then he says, how can I build my database? So you say, wow. So I mean, if that was the question on the first year, you wouldn't be sitting here. So this is the difference I've seen across the trend, and it's there in most of the markets. So the problem is that if you don't respect the data, it's the reverse will start working for you, right? Because the data will tell you it's quite transparent. This is what it is, this is how the trend is, this is what the outcome is. A lot of times our trend analysis, we can, for a larger brands, we even tell them 6 months in advance that out of your 20 outlets, these 3 are going to shut down. And they're like, how? I said, I can straight away see the trend line on the way people are talking about your brands, your online, your in-store, your feedback, your analysis. Everything tells you that this is not going to work. So this, I think, is where, in my mind, technology and the data plays a very, very critical role as far as this topic goes in. So I think if you respect the data and if you mine it, it will always be very helpful in getting you out of this.
Thank you, Samir. Piyush?
Okay, so you're asking how does the brand, like building a brand, is that the way to go about it, or is it the discount led? Is that?
So I mean, choices that you make to run your business.
Yeah.
Either you build a great brand with high quality food, high quality experience, or you still can build high quality experience, but you are known for discount, not for experience.
Yeah.
What do you want to be?
Got it. Yeah, so I'm sure, everyone would want to build the brand, right? I mean, that's something which everyone would want to do.
Just to qualify, the people who raised hands with 50% and above, please ignore this conversation.
Yeah. So everyone would want to build a brand, ideally, and they would want to get customers without discount if the need be, if that's easier to do it that way. But the fundamental, the thing with building a brand is not just discounting, right? I mean, the building a brand can happen would primarily happen from the engagement side of the thing. I'd like to take an example of one of our merchants. I don't know how many of you know of Burger Singh. Yeah. So the way those guys do the engagement with their customers, that's very, very different than what we have seen across all the restaurants. And I think building a brand is more like, so for example, there is Uber, there is Ola, and we can talk about who gives more discount, etc. But the brand of one particular company is clearly higher than the other one. And I think building a brand would primarily be more function of how are they portraying themselves, how are they communicating to the customers. Now, it is not necessarily bad to sort of get customers via discount, but how that needs to be communicated, I think that's something which is very, very important. And getting the customers for the first time through a discount, I don't think that was bad. Getting the customers for the second time through lesser discount, I really don't think that's also bad. Getting the because most of the customers, so for example, we have seen this data across, and these are like really, if you think, so a lot of people say that the repeat rate in case of food is very high, but the way people look at repeat is how many customers, so let's say if 100 people are ordering today, then the way people look at repeat is how many of those are old. That's how generally people look at repeat businesses. But the way repeat business needs to be looked at is, or the way the e-commerce companies, etc., do it, is how many percentage of the customers are repeating the second month after they have ordered, the third month after they have ordered. And the data that we have seen is, 16% of the customers on an average repeat the second month, and the following 13% of the customers repeat in the third month, and then this number boils down. This number goes down to about 0 in 16 months of time. That is how it sort of happens. And the customer who remain on the platform are primarily those customers who associate with the restaurants, who identify with the brand through multiple engagements, through getting the customers excited via first sort of discounting, if that has been done, introducing a loyalty plan in between somewhere, if that is required, just to get the second, third transactions going on. And the customers have done the third transaction, then after that, it becomes super, super easy for that customer to come back sort of once again. So in that specified amount of time. So it's not as if the first customer's ordered on, let's say, day 1, and then day 300, they're ordering the second order. Of course, it would not classify as a sort of a brand building sort of an exercise, but I think engagement would play a major part in building a brand with the existing customer, and even on the newer customer, building a brand could primarily help, could be done via getting the existing customers to start getting the existing customer to sort of start talking about the restaurants on the internet. So, for example, one of the things which a lot of customers have started doing with us is the customers who are loyal customers, right? They've started sending out campaigns to those loyal customers and asking them, hey, why don't you sort of talk about us on, Google? Why don't you sort of talk about us on Zomato, so on Facebook, so on and so forth, right? Just so building a brand is something which is which can happen. I mean, I don't necessarily agree with that. It should not be entirely discount-led, but I think it's much more about communication than anything else.
Thank you. I think I was going to be a little controversial, a little bit more on this, but we are running out of time. I just want to be conscious of everybody's time here, and if I can ask, show of hands, quick question. All of us are foodies, most of us are. How many people understand adrak, lasan, mirch, garam masala, tomato, pyaz? Does everybody understand? Yeah? How many people understand techie jargons like IoT, artificial intelligence, AI, this, that, and the other? Mine is down. Okay, so not many people. And as a restaurant owner, I understand my food, I understand my customer, I understand all of that consumer wants on the plate. And now these guys want me to understand all these technical jargons. Let's throw a quick question on where are these technical jargons taking us? Samir?
I guess I'll be real quick on this. Yeah, I think these are all big stuff. I always say, in the normal language, more analysis leads to paralysis. So, those are some areas, and then you come as a techie. If I wear my hat, I'm talking to the guy and trying to sell him, you have to do your data analysis and so on and so forth, and I can go on for 1 hour. So I guess based on the business, you should do your data analysis. Based on the size, based on the restaurant, based on the cuisine. It all depends. If you're fine dine, your analysis has to be of a complete different segment. If you're a casual dine, it has to be of a different segment. So big data definitely plays a big role. AI is something you can't avoid. If I go too far, it's scary at times, but it's not going to, no one can run away from it. It's like you were saying, God. So you have to pray for it. You have to pray for AI. It's going to come behind you at some point of time. IoT is another thing which I think IoT will take a lot of, increase your revenues or increase your profits, because IoT is something which will definitely help you in terms of your server management, waiters, less staff, all of it. So I think as IoT brings in, it's going to add at multiple areas. IoT also gives you a lot of data points stored across different restaurants, and that will give you idea on who is sitting at which table and how long, and so based, again, as I said, this is great for McDonald's. It might not be great if you're running a 2-outlet chain. So again, it goes back to as simple. I've seen a lot of one restaurant, 2 restaurant guys coming out and saying, I want to launch my own app, and that's the same thing, right? So don't do that. you're killing your own self. So that's how it works out to be on all of these jargons. So it will be useful, but it will have its own degree across different brands. Thanks.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, everyone. Once again, thank you, everyone, for being with us, and would like to welcome each one of you once again to the Indian Restaurant. As we all know, it's a very wonderful day, Indian Restaurant Congress 2017. So moving towards the next, would like to request Ms. Pritima Bharadwaj to present mementos to the dignitaries. I would like to request Ms. Pritima Bharadwaj to present mementos to the dignitaries we have here. Can we have a huge round of applause, everyone?
Thank you. A quick one to the audience. Thank you for bearing with show of hands and helping me in shifting the gears.
It means a lot for us, sir. Thank you. Once again, would like to thank Franchise India for giving us, all of us, a platform to socialize, to connect people to people. So now moving towards next.